In this lecture series, we'll be examining the continuation of the progressive movement of the early 20th century with the third progressive president of the 1900s, Woodrow Wilson. We'll see the continued beating of the drum for women's suffrage. We'll also see the persistent race relations problem continue in the United States, which is exacerbated when blacks who are oppressed politically, economically, and socially in the South finally pick up and leave the land of their birth to head to northern and midwestern industrialized cities in search of wage labor. And we'll see the strains that that puts on white-black relations as whites and blacks are now living in closer proximity in these densely populated urban areas. We'll look at the immigration issue and how that is further complicated by the onset of World War I. And we'll look at America's continually evolving foreign policy in the early 1900s that is evolving with an interventionist bent. So we'll see President Theodore Roosevelt's Big Stick foreign policy and the Roosevelt corollary. We'll see William Howard Taft's dollar diplomacy, and we'll look at Wilson's moral imperialism or liberal internationalism. And all three of those policies really involve heavy-handed approaches with Latin America that deeply affect U.S.-Latin American relations as the Caribbean becomes what's sometimes referred to as the Yankee Lake, and these policies become known as the bad neighbor policies of the U.S. And of course, we'll look at America's involvement in World War I. Even though Wilson attempts to keep the United States neutral, it is eventually provoked into joining the war effort. And so we'll talk about that, and then we'll talk about how the United States mobilized for entry into World War I, and how the American public, which was so resistant to getting involved in an overseas war, is finally motivated and convinced to join the war effort through really a massive propaganda campaign that's launched by the Wilson administration. This series will be broken up into several lectures based on subtopics so that you can more easily work your way through each of the subheadings of this series, and also go back and revisit any one of these subtopics if needed without having to navigate your way through the entire series. The subtopics for this series are an era of intervention, America and the Great War, the war at home, who is an American, and 1919. And of course, as you listen to any one of these lectures or after having reviewed the entire series, if you have any questions about the content, please feel free to send me an email, or you can post your question to the coffee shop discussion board in Canvas so that your peers can get involved in a discussion around that question as well.